Movie begins with the three revolutionaries named Calvin Kumalo, Aldo Erasmus, and Mbali Terra Mabunda barging into a bank and shooting blanks in the air. Calvin asks everyone to get down to the ground. He also emphasizes that it is not a robbery, and if everyone cooperates, they will get to go home safely. Their mission is far bigger than getting easy money. Calvin gives an explanation of their actions. These three people are just a handful of liberation fighters fighting their own nation's apartheid regime. The only thing left to them by the white minority was violence. Making the nation ungovernable is their primary objective. Their commanders have given them orders to destroy important targets in the city, such as the oil business that provides gasoline to the South African Defense Force. After taking the oil, they intend to set explosives to blow up as many fuel tanks as they can. They park their vehicle near their target site, while waiting for the signal from their insider, who is supposed to drive the truck. They need him to have access to the gate. They hear on the radio that their sabotage acts are affecting thousands of homes in large cities in the country. The uprising is taking a toll on the government. That's their goal. Captain Johann Langerman, with his carefully placed operatives, is observing their movements a few yards away. Schulman is informed by Johann that the violence will end today. He is sure that the militants will be destroyed shortly. Calvin exits the car to investigate the surroundings. He senses that there's a problem. He cautions his crew to exercise caution. They are preparing to head out when a fuel tanker comes. They'd assume one of their men is behind the wheel. The driver is not their type, Calvin informs them. They decide to call off the mission because the team's safety is now in doubt. They immediately leave the site. As their vehicle leaves, police cars start chasing them until they are able to separate from them after the authorities are blocked by a truck carrying vegetables. Johann hits the rear tire of their vehicle, leaving them no choice but to hide at a taxi garage. The security guard begins shooting at them. In a panic, the driver hits the accelerator hard and rams the car into a wall. The driver is killed. As the security moves in, Calvin hits him in the back of his head. The team then makes off, running for a tunnel. The three freedom fighters are located by the authorities. Calvin is having trouble breathing, so he searches for his inhaler as they are being pursued on foot. He is unaware that Captain Johann had already retrieved it from the taxi garage. Mbali pulls a revolver and fires at the police to slow them down as Aldo goes back to assist Calvin. They then keep running in search of cover. Once they are cornered in a mall, a gunfight takes place before they run away again. They have no way out and are besieged this time. Everywhere they go, a helicopter follows them and all highways are blocked. They see someone leaving through an open door as they are pulling away. They enter the bank without noticing that it is occupied by a number of civilian customers. It is now a hostage situation, Captain Johann tells his troops. Calvin motions for everyone to kneel down. Calvin notices the bank manager as he tries to call the police. The manager begs Calvin not to shoot as Calvin then makes him get down. Calvin also emphasizes that it is not a robbery, and if everyone stays calm and cooperates, they will get to go home safely. Calvin checks for the remaining employees in the bank. He comes across the bank supervisor, Christine. She confirms that their only way out is from the front. There is no other exit. Right outside the bank, a woman, who claims to be related to Christine, refuses to move out of the way. She wants to help. She is the maid of one of the hostages. Mbali demands an answer as to how their plans went south. Aldo believes that a high-ranking official betrayed them. Calvin is likewise skeptical of Captain Johann's apparent mission knowledge. It is intended that this mission be top secret. They're all shocked at how it was discovered. Captain Johann starts using a megaphone to negotiate from the outside. Since the authorities are encircling the entire area, he identifies the three of them and requests that they submit quietly. Later on, Johann and Calvin are able to communicate over the phone. The officer admits that they have been monitoring Calvin and his team for months. Calvin insists on having an unarmed pilot in the aircraft. He also lets the officer know that an American is among the hostages and that he is traveling with them. In 20 minutes, Calvin wants the helicopter. There's no negotiating the demand. Outside the bank, a chopper is ready for the freedom fighters. Aldo receives assurances from Calvin that they will get out of this problem and that he will get to hold his baby. Right now, his wife is expecting a child. Calvin apologizes for the mess and addresses the hostages. Telling the black American he's flying with them, he walks up to him. The American insists on staying and argues that he's black. To make it more convincing that they are true with an American, Calvin picks the bank manager instead before exiting the bank. Once they reach the helicopter, commotion ensues as the pilot grabs a gun from his seat. Calvin controls the pilot and makes him descend from the chopper. The captive makes an attempt to flee, but he is apprehended. Calvin makes the decision to return inside with the pilot after realizing it is unsafe to stay outside. Calvin discovers that the politician is also wired. The pilot protests that he is only a pilot, but Mandela takes him to the restroom in an attempt to coerce him into telling them who the informant is. Brigadier Hans and his troops come as Johann and Schumann are deciding what to do once the wiretap is revealed. He informs Johann that the Prime Minister, whom they call the Big Crocodile, wants to see him with regard to the actions he has taken related to the hostage. Before Brigadier Hans leaves, he hands over the manifest of the bank and informs Johann and Schumann that Christine is the daughter of the Justice Minister. Calvin is at peace now that they are not getting out of the bank alive. He suggests that they turn their situation into a movement. He asks to speak with Johann in person by the door. Calvin demands the release of Nelson Mandela, an anti-apartheid activist who is currently in prison. He wants all the charges against Mandela to be dropped. He also demands a signed presidential pardon for Mandela. Once Mandela is released in full public view, Calvin and his team will then surrender. Calvin receives a call from Johann, but his demands are not met yet. Johann explains that his request will take time to be approved. Calvin grabs the American, asks him to take a trolley full of cash, then takes him outside. Once outside, Brigadier Hans orders Johann to eliminate them, but Johann refuses to follow the order as the black guy pushing the trolley appears to be a hostage and not one of them. Calvin orders the American to set the money on fire. As the money is burning, Calvin moves closer to the media and screams, "Free Nelson Mandela," several times. The snipers ask for permission to engage, but Johann does not give the go signal as he is still negotiating. Before Calvin returns inside, he establishes the tone outside by getting by with his chants for Nelson Mandela's release. Christine tries to talk sense into Calvin's head. She takes another hostage with her. According to Christine, the police saw Nelson Mandela as the pinnacle of terrorism. They will not therefore be releasing him. This does not depress Calvin. He begs them to stop bothering him. While the pilot is bleeding, Aldo leads him to the restroom. When they begin releasing the captives, the pilot insists that his name be at the top of the list. If not, he would reveal to Aldo's allies that Aldo is the mole. He was the one who leaked the fuel depot mission. The pilot then threatens that he knows where Aldo's wife lives. Aldo snaps and kills the pilot by stabbing him. Aldo hits his head on purpose to make it look like the pilot attacked him. Calvin demands food and water for the hostages. In return, Johann requests that they release 2 hostages. Unaware of the reason, he wishes for one of them to be Christine. Christine decides to remain. Then, 2 hostages are set free. Grabbing a gun, the bank manager kidnaps Aldo and holds him captive. There are gunshots, and Mbali sustains injuries. Calvin is able to hold the bank boss in check. Johann approaches Calvin while he is burning through more cash and shows him the Prime Minister's signed statement of release and pardon. Calvin is not persuaded since he believes Mandela should be freed. Johann insists on being let inside so he may check on everyone. Mandela will be freed as soon as he can confirm that every hostage has been found. He allows the captain to get inside, who goes directly to Christine to convince her to go with him. Christine remains defiant. Calvin then asks the officer to go out as he has seen what he came in for. As Johann is leaving, he notices that the pilot is not there. Calvin asks him to leave and not ask any more questions. Mbali notices that he has a gun holstered on his uncle. She determines Aldo is the mole when the police verifies his identity. Even though no one had called the officer out, Aldo brought up Johann's name. While his wife is being held captive by the authorities, Aldo begs for pardon. Then Mbali kills him with a gunshot. The Prime Minister gives Brigadier Hans permission to move in. Given that he was let go, Johann finds this to be unacceptable. He thinks that it is still possible to prevent violence. Christine approaches Johann outside to talk. In order to communicate with her father, he also addresses the media. She says that the people taking hostages are fighting for their freedom, not for criminal purposes. A sniper fires, intending to target Calvin, but it ends up hitting Christine. She will survive. Jolene calls Calvin to warn him that Hans is sending a SWAT team to move in. It's no longer under his control. After the call, Calvin pretends that the call comes from the Prime Minister and that Mandela is about to be released. He then tells the hostages that they are now free to go. At this point, all the hostages are free. Mbali and Calvin remain inside, uncertain of what is going to happen next. Brigadier Hans then orders his men to move in. A firefight takes place as the freedom fighters refuse to surrender. They kill as many men as they can while retreating back inside and into the vault. Hans demands that they surrender. This would be their last chance. The officer then orders his men to get ready to attack again. Meanwhile, Calvin and Mbali take a breather and reload their weapons as they prepare for another attack. They walk towards the main door in anticipation of another onslaught. They are ready and willing to engage. Gunshots then transpire. The movie ends with the bravery of the three did not go to waste, as their actions sparked what would eventually become the Free Nelson Mandela campaign. Mandela was soon released in February of 1990 to become the first black president of South Africa. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this and help the channel grow.